All right. Hello, everyone. What is up? Welcome to Directions. So, as you all might have noticed, it's just me today. My normal partner in crime, Carly, is a little under the weather. So, we're hoping that she gets well soon. And so that way she can join us for the next time. But who knows? Maybe she'll even watch live and throw a question in the chat for our guests from home. But either way, Carly, if you're watching, get well soon. Can't wait to see you back in the office. All right. So, for those of you who maybe it's your first time joining and you don't know, my name is Christian Gaddis. I am the director of recruitment marketing here at 43 North. If you want to connect with me, my LinkedIn is right there. My job and my role here is to make sure that you all know everything about the latest and greatest startup opportunities in the growing Buffalo startup and tech scene. And that's companies within the 43 North portfolio, companies outside of the 43 North portfolio, whatever it is, trying to make sure that you stay connected to what's going on and checking out all the cool things that are going on in our scene. So, again, right, for those of you who maybe this is your first time tuning in or you're not sure, right, 43 North Compass is designed to connect you, the talented folks of Western New York and Buffalo, with startups and tech companies right here in the 716. We're a part of 43 North. So as companies come into our cool program and they start to, build and grow their teams, myself and my friend Carly, we're usually right there with them, helping them to source and find talent and trying to bring these opportunities right to your doorstep. So if you're interested in learning more about 43 North Compass, who we are and what we do, again, you can connect with us right on LinkedIn, follow us, stay tuned for the latest events, whether it's office hours, career fairs, see who's going to be up next on Directions. We got a really great guest coming up today. She's only worked at startups for an entire career, so it's going to be a really unique perspective of what your career can look like in the future right here in Buffalo. But before we bring Rachel out of the virtual backstage area, I'm going to tell you all how you can find the latest and greatest jobs at startups and tech companies right here in Buffalo, and that's through our job board. Super simple. Scan the code, check out the latest opportunities. I know we have people who usually say to us, listen, I don't know if this startup thing is for me because I don't know how to code. I'm not very technical, whatever those things are, right? The reality is, and you're going to see from this guest coming out, these companies need everything from marketing to sales to HR, right? You just got to find the right spot that fits best for you. Maybe even follow your passions, because if you're chasing your passion, it's going to be something that's going to be great and you're going to want to stay on in that company for longer. But the opportunities are there. They're ready for you to take advantage of them. So again, check out our job board, or you can join our talent network. Super simple to join. All you need is your name, your email address, and you connect it with your LinkedIn. So that way, as you start to grow and up your skills, folks like our talented recruiters and others from the companies that we work with can see you based on your skills, and they may reach out to you to say, hey, we got a great opportunity for you to check out. Come on and join our team or come out and learn more. So again, right, check out the Compass job board for the latest opportunities, see what's out there for you and what's available. All right, one last plug before we bring out Rachel. The chat is going to be open, so if you have any questions, drop them right in the chat. Love to answer, love to make sure that we can, stay connected with everybody and get those answers to those questions. You don't have to be a question for me. They can be a question for Rachel. Maybe she says something interesting and you just want to jump in the conversation. That's what we're here for. So please feel free, jump in the chat, ask those questions, fire them up. All right. Okay. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Rachel out of the virtual back. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate having you with us. Quick introduction, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Rachel Ernisse. She is the marketing director, design and multimedia at Circuit Clinical. Rachel, again, thank you so much for joining the chat today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really excited to have a conversation about, working at startups and, opening that dialogue.
Cool. So we always kick off every interview by asking our guests that number one and our favorite interview question. So please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So, my background is primarily in graphic design. I started off working freelance actually, just, a couple clients here and there. And I actually joined my first startup back USA as a marketing coordinator. So, my background, like I said, being in graphic design, I also have, multimedia experience, everything from photography to film and that sort of thing. And so, this first role at this first startup, I was really able to dig deeper into some of those skill sets. I was given the opportunity to move up. I quickly became a graphic designer and photographer there. And, I had great mentors that, kind of helped me build that skill set, that gave me really cool opportunities that I don't think I would have been able to get otherwise. And, had just a really great time with the people there and a really great team to support me. From there, I joined my second startup, which is a fellow 43 North company called Soma Detect. And there was a little different. I went from being in a marketing team that had, a lot of different skill sets and roles fleshed out, to kind of being a marketing team of one. So that role offered me even more experiences to kind of get into something new, to take some initiative and, really dig more into the marketing side of things, whereas before I had a lot of focus on the creativity or creative side. So that was a really cool experience. And it was a completely different industry as well from the first startup I worked in. That was in agriculture technology. So very different customers and that sort of thing. But it was a great learning experience. And then finally, the third startup that I ended up joining was and still is Circuit Clinical. So again, completely different industry. We're in healthcare and clinical research, but I started off as, a graphic designer and, had some really great mentors to, help build out the brand here a little bit, start to build some foundation in terms of, what is our messaging and, what is our website going to look like? How's Circuit Clinical going to look and feel? And so, I've been here for a little over 3 years and, kind of worked my way up as well. And to your point, now I'm the marketing director here. And yeah, I'm able to work on just an incredible team on incredible projects and, just really happy to have had the experiences I've had so far in startups.
Yeah, that's so great. And a few things I want to actually like dive into on that because I think you made
Sure.
a lot of really great point. I think your journey can serve to help so many people who are maybe right in that similar position. Um, so I know for me, right, when I was going to school, when I was studying kind of communications and doing all those things, right, startup was like very far from my radar, right? Was How was that experience for you? Were you kind of doing this, looking at what was going on and maybe seeing some early things in the Buffalo startup and tech ecosystem saying maybe, or were you just kind of like, let me just get out of school and figure out what I'm going to do?
Yeah, I mean, it was really the latter. I was very eager. I was applying to jobs before I had even graduated. I just really wanted to get out there and, start building my career. And so, I had expanded my search to kind of everywhere, Buffalo, Rochester, Boston, just kind of anywhere and everywhere. And, I really honed in on Buffalo specifically because, I had family in the area. It was an area I felt a little familiar with. And so, to your point, startups weren't really discussed too much in our program. It was either, hey, you can work at an agency or you can work at a large company. But entrepreneurship and startup, communities weren't really on the radar for me until I had applied for a position at Back USA and, thought, oh, this is a really cool opportunity. I can be a part of something that's innovative, that's small, that's trying to do something different. And I can really put my mark on that in my own way, using my own skills. And so that was really, really cool to be part of that and to be part of a team that all really believed in the mission and, was really focused on, let's get stuff done, let's take on these new challenges. Let's come up with some new innovative solutions for the industry that we're in. And, from there, I just really saw all of the benefits that come with working at startups. And, there are some risks too, don't get me wrong, but, there's so much great opportunity and you get to meet such incredible people. So, from there, it just was a no brainer for me.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that, right? Such a great point too. I mean, we always tell people, right? We're not here to sugarcoat it, right? I mean, startups,
Mhm.
there are risks. There are, at the end of the day, right? It's a job, and no one fully likes 100% of any job, right? But there are so many great opportunities that you can get so much more out of it. And one of the things that you hit on was right that belief in the mission, that belief in the
Mhm.
purpose of the company. And I think actually it ties into a great question from John. And Rachel, if you've never watched before, John is a bit of a super viewer of directions. So he always kind of chimes in with some great points or great questions. And I think this one kind of ties into that really well too, talking about how concerned an individual should be with the in terms of right that interest in the company or the lack of knowledge of the industry. And I think your story specifically, right,
Oh,
going
yeah.
from kind of ad tech to medical research, like, you know, I mean, I don't know, maybe those are two big hobbies of yours that you really dive into in your spare time, maybe not, but I think talk to that, right? Talk to an
Oh,
understanding
yeah.
of just the overall industry maybe itself, but also
Yeah.
still being able to identify with the mission still, whatever that is, whether you have knowledge or not.
For sure. So yeah, John, absolutely great question. I entered each of these startups having little to no industry background or experience in them. I think that is one of the beautiful things about working for startups is that, you are able to really go in and apply your skill set and experience, not necessarily having that background. There's people that I've met even at Circuit that, they maybe didn't have a background in healthcare, but have always been interested in it. Or, maybe they never really considered healthcare, but, they found this company and they really connected with the mission. I think those are all really good indicators that, you should work at that startup. And in terms of, that industry knowledge, that's something that you can gain. So in every startup that I've worked for, one of the things that I've always done is, especially when I'm just starting there, is I dive in headfirst into anything and everything I can learn about the industry, right? Like I'm going on Google, I'm doing research, I'm asking my colleagues, I'm doing as much as I can to really gain that knowledge so that I can apply my skills in the most effective way. So, while I do think having some industry knowledge, or at the very least having an interest in the industry, is a good thing. I don't think that's necessarily something that should hold someone back if they really want to work at a startup and, maybe, they don't have that background necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, I think you hit the nail on the head. You don't necessarily need to be a doctor, right, to identify with the need for improved clinical research and access. And
Right.
so, as long as you have your area of expertise that you can contribute to the mission, you just need to believe in the mission, not necessarily know how to do right the
Right.
things. And I want to even circle back a little bit to the other point that you made, kind of right, and during the tell us about yourself question, when you talked about opportunities and growth, and how
Mm,
you
mhm.
quickly realized and started to understand, like, I'm gonna need a chance to do a lot of things that little scary because I may not know right the exact way to do this. I may not have the exact roadmap, but I'm gonna get a chance to do it and to learn. And for that, hopefully, if I'm successful, I get rewarded with growth, right? Um, you
Right.
know, for you throughout your career, how has that been? How has your experience with that been? And what are the things what were those moments where you were like, I can do this. I got to take advantage of this.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I've been very grateful and thankful that I've had the opportunities to have those experiences. It comes with a lot of trust. I remember my first manager. He was a big mentor of mine, and him and I had just such a great working relationship. And he had seen something in me that I had not noticed myself. His background was more so in film and video, and it was something that I never really thought too much about. Again, background in graphic design, creating cool stuff on a computer. So he came to me one day and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about directing? Directing a video. I think you might actually be really good at that." And it wasn't something I had thought about, but here was somebody that saw this potential in me and thought, let's give it a shot. And so he gave me these opportunities to actually direct some of the video shoots that we were doing at the time for some of our marketing campaigns. And that was incredible. Yes, to your point, scary. I mean, you're a lot's going on, and you have to manage a lot of things for directing a video shoot. But uh, I learned along the way. I asked him questions, and I had the support of my team and the trust of my team in order to effectively do those things. And it just opened a whole new avenue for me, of something that I'm like, oh, I actually really love this, and I want to pursue this a little bit. And so there have been moments where I've been able to do that in the roles that I've had in startups. As long as the opportunity presents itself, I'm always going to raise my hand and say yes. I think that's a big part of it, is pushing through that fear and being willing to take on the initiative and be confident in yourself that, maybe you don't have the answer today, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't necessarily try to get that answer, or ask for help and kind of figure it out. And there's a ton of examples that I've been able to have. The video shoots are just one. There's photo shoots. At Circuit, I've been able to expand my animation skills, which has been incredible. So I think it's a combination of having a trusting environment, having someone that believes in you and gives you the space to grow, and believing in yourself, as corny as that might sound, that you're gonna figure it out, and you're gonna do your best, and see yourself on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the early day managers who are
Yeah.
realizing those things and seeing those things. We had Dave Gonzalez on a few weeks ago, and he talked about a mentor early on asking him, right, what do you want to do? Where are you
Hmm.
seeing yourself? And it's so often that those moments are pivotal in individuals' careers, and in the case of Dave, right, a company itself kind of being formed and seeing where that runs.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I think one of those perceptions is, for startups, everyone's moving too fast
Mm,
to do that or to do those things. But clearly for you, right, and for a number of people, those individuals taking that time, almost sometimes because they have to with a smaller
right.
team, right?
Right.
It is what ends up happening. And I love that you hit on the trust that's needed,
Hmm.
because it's that understanding of, listen, there may only be seven of us, but we got to find the answers in that seven. Otherwise, right, the ship's going to go down.
Right.
Um, and so, I want to talk about, and I want to switch to, or I guess get on the subject of, right, switching companies. And for a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people, right, you go through this, and maybe you join a startup, and then you're like, okay, that felt like a bit of a wild ride. I'm going to go do something a little bit more, I hate to say stable, but something a little bit more corporate, maybe, right? Something that
Right.
feels a little bit more stable. And then you maybe come back once you get sick of the suit and tie and then, the normal, whatever that is, right, that's attached to it. But for you, you were like, nope, I'm going to leave one startup, go to the next, right? What
Yeah.
was that thought process like? What was that like for you? Was there ever a question of, do I want to keep doing this startup thing?
Yeah, I mean that definitely was a question at some point. The first startup I worked for, it didn't necessarily have the happiest ending, and so I had a lot of lessons learned, and I kind of had to ask myself, is this something a ride I want to get back on? Startups, they do require a lot of work. Not to say that a corporate job doesn't, but there's been, in my experience, working long hours, sometimes working weekends, and that sort of thing. So they do, I think, take on a special kind of flavor, I would say, of work-life balance. And for me, I really had to sit with myself and ask, do I want that same environment? Do I want to take on that risk again? Do I want to pursue this? And it was always yes. I can't say enough. The total variation of experiences that I've had that have made me a more well-rounded professional, and also just in my own personal growth as well. I've been able to learn lessons like setting boundaries, like proper prioritization of things, of tasks and that sort of thing. Because to your point, startups can move very, very fast, and priorities can change very quickly. And so I see all of those things as incredible benefits. And I mean, yes, I have only worked at startups, so I can't necessarily speak to corporate environment, but for me, it's just been worth it. And I've also been very lucky to have very supportive friends and family too. I have a very supportive network that is able to kind of help me navigate those things and, be able to support my journey in startups. So, yeah, I think it just all depends on what you're looking for out of your work and what you're looking for your career.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I love the fact that you kind of chime in on just the ups and downs of it all.
Mhm.
Right, painting that real picture, and unfortunately, right, startups fail, regular corporations fail. The reality is that that's kind of true in business. But I think, and I would love to hear you kind of speak on even going through that or seeing that happen firsthand, right, and
Yeah.
kind of, we often hear founders and other startup employees and early stage employees talking about that need to be resilient,
Yep.
and to adapt. And those other kind of, they sound like they're startup buzzwords, but the reality is it's kind of, it is part of the toolkit you need to kind of go through this. And so I would just love to hear, right, from you, from your experience, like how that, kind of, I guess, built that in you.
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, it is no secret. I mean, to your point, startups do fail and, they go through a lot of change. I don't think any company, startup or otherwise, is immune to something like layoffs. And it's an unfortunate reality that, I've had to experience myself. I think for me, the biggest lesson was I'm somebody who, like I mentioned, I dive right in, right? I'm all about the mission, and you put a lot of yourself into a startup, into the work that you're doing. So when something like that happens, it can kind of be a little earth shattering. But to your point, I think it is a really good lesson of resilience. And, to say, okay, if this is the worst thing that's going to happen to me and I can get through it, like I'm untouchable, like I can accomplish anything. It does, I think, help build your confidence, to know that you're going to be okay, you're going to see the other side, and to stick with it, and just get right back up as something like that happens. As I think it's easier said than done, but I think, to your point, it's like something more stable. And people don't think startups, they think they're risky, but there's risk inherently, I think, anywhere you're going to go. And so I think startups have just an incredible way of building that resilience and knowing that, I'm confident in my skill set, in my abilities, that I'm going to land on my feet.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a critical thing that people need to and should understand, right? At
Hmm.
the end of the day, so often we paint everything in the lens of you need this for a startup, or you need that skill for a startup, or whatever it is that
Yeah.
when it comes to those intangible things. But the reality is, right, is that you need those skills for life half the time,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, right? I asked this question to I heard one of our founders rather ask this question to a group of kids when he was trying to explain to them, and they literally were kids. I'm not doing that thing where I call like college students kids, like they were like not elementary, they were like high school age kids. But he asked them like, who raise your hand if you've ever had a problem in your life, and none of the kids kind of raised their hands. And he was like, "Oh wow, so you guys are just living problem free." And so, for him, it was kind of how he was going to segue into how he became a founder. But I
Hmm.
think it's one of those things where either way, right? Everything we do, whether you're a founder, an employee, or whatever it is, it comes from this human perspective and experience. And so these are skills that are great for life, not just for work.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. I see we have another question pop in the chat from Danielle. She said, "I admire your confidence in dealing with an experience when something went badly. Did you ever consider moving to something more secure, like a corporation? And if so, what is it that made you choose to stick with startups?"
Yeah, I did consider it for sure. The last time I was in a job transition, I did, apply to a few companies that were more so corporations. But the reason why I stuck with startups, at the end of the day, a lot of times it came down to the team. I met such incredible people, a lot of times at a 43 North event, not gonna lie, but I was able to meet such incredible people in this community. And their passion was contagious. I really wanted to be on a team that, like we were talking about before, that really believed in the mission and really wanted to work for something, larger. And so, as large as you can be with a startup, especially an early stage startup, there is this hope and this belief that I think is very contagious. And so a lot of times it's the people that I work with that make me stick with startups. Everything I look back on my career, I think about all these incredible relationships I've made. I mean, I met my husband at a startup. So, I think people just really, really make your experience. And I can't speak highly enough about all the people I've been able to meet by working at startups and just in this community. The 43 North community has a ton of incredible people and incredible talent, along with the broader Western New York startup community. It's just it feels really cool to be a part of something like this and to be with like-minded individuals that are eager, that really want to use their skills to contribute to their broader industry or their startup. So yes, I did consider a couple of corporate gigs, but not going to quit that easily for startups for me.
Great, great, love it, and great question, Danielle. Thank you so much for chiming in. Rachel, I'm going to go a little off script here, but you mentioned
Sure.
kind of right, 43 North community, even Buffalo's startup and tech ecosystem, and
Hmm.
obviously, right, you've been again at different companies at various stages throughout your career, and so how have you've seen and experienced this ecosystem kind of growing during even your time, working at startups?
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would say the first startup I worked for, that was pretty early on, even in the 43 North competition. I think
Mhm.
they had only done, the first competition. And I have to preface this: I'm actually not a Buffalo native. I've only really been living here for 7 years. And so, but even in that time, seeing that growth has been really, really cool. And you can feel it. I feel it when I go to these networking events, and I feel it when I'm walking around Seneca One, and when I'm going to all of these different startup events and that sort of thing. I mean, I know Serendipity Labs does a serial social every third Thursday, and I just started trying to go to those, but there's been a lot of different events that have been going on throughout the years. I know there's been some coffee meetups and that sort of thing. So, for people who want to get involved in startups in the startup community, there's so many outlets now, and I think way more than what there was, even to my point 7 years ago. So it's been really, really cool to see that growth and to have even my small part of it.
Yeah, yeah. Again, fellow non-Buffalo native. So
Hmm.
I feel you, right? As a transplant coming to this community, I like to think that I've become a champion of Buffalo,
Hmm.
and kind of helping to spread the word about the great things that we're doing here. So, love to be able to chat with, right, a fellow transplant in that regard.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and so, okay, all right, gang. We're gonna wind this down with Rachel. I'm gonna, give the chat room to ask maybe one or two more questions. So while you guys are typing that, Rachel, I just want to thank you for joining us. Tell you how much I appreciate it. And then I would love for you just, you kind of started speaking to the people a little bit, talking about getting involved, right? If there's anyone watching the stream now, what advice would you give them
Mhm.
about getting involved with the startup, checking out the Buffalo startup and tech ecosystem? What would you tell anybody who maybe is in your position earlier on, right? If you're talking to yourself fresh out of school, or even before you're out of school, while you're applying.
Oh yeah, yes. I would say very first and foremost to be completely open-minded, to see what the potentials are in these companies that are coming here and, trying to do something unique or something innovative and different. Just make yourself available to the opportunities that come your way because they're out there. I would say for people who maybe, they have an upcoming interview for a startup, I always like to ask in a lot of the interviews that I, had been a part of, hey, what's the 5-year plan for this startup? what are the priorities here? I think that really helps gauge, where exactly is that company at in their growth stage? Are they early? Because I think an early startup, while there are incredible opportunities, is going to be a little different than working for a startup that maybe is in that growth phase or just starting to exit kind of that startup size. It's going to be a different experience. There's going to be, potentially different work-life balances. There's going to be, maybe some differences in what processes have been built out or what foundations have been built out. What are they using for things like prioritization? Because that's another big one. I mean, startups can change very rapidly. Priorities can change really rapidly. And so asking, what systems do they have in place for something like that? I think those are all really, really great questions. And, finally, just talking, I think this live stream is a great example, but, also reaching out to people who have been working at startups and getting their honest feedback. And, I know I mentioned it a little earlier in the talk, but it is important to, I think, find that mentor as well. And I think when I first started my career, I always heard find your mentor. And I always thought that was something like, oh, I got to go out and find this titan of industry, like someone who has all the answers. But it really wasn't that complicated. It's finding somebody that, is going to listen to you and going to, help you navigate this journey that you're on, especially if you want to work at a startup. And is going to help you grow and help you achieve all the things that you want to achieve in your career. So that person can be a friend, they can be a colleague, they can be a manager, they can be someone on the executive team. It's just anyone that you can trust and have some of those frank conversations so that they're able to help you navigate this landscape. But uh, I think I answered a little bit multi-part answer there, but yeah, find that mentor, be open-minded, get ready to take on some initiatives and be a self-starter. I think that's really important. And just be honest with yourself and what you're looking for, and get involved.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't echo that anymore. I think right, that mentorship piece is so huge, and so often people think, right, it has to be this business juggernaut, and the reality
Mhm.
is that you just need some. I mean, truthfully, right, it could be a friend who's a year or two older than you who's experienced it. You just need
Right.
someone with a little bit more knowledge than you, and that can be super helpful, right? Now, with that being said, if there are any titans of industry watching and you do want to mentor someone in the startup space, please connect with us, connect with Compass, reach out, and we will, we got plenty of people who are coming to us. So we would be happy to spread the word and absolutely help others find it. But Rachel, thank you so much. Again, I appreciate you for joining us. I'm going to let you go. It seems like you nailed it on your answer. So I don't think the chat is popping off with anything. But again, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you. Looking forward to seeing, everything that you are doing and everything that Circuit Clinical is doing moving forward.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I hope everyone learned something or can walk away with something today. And I hope everyone has a great week ahead.
All right. Take care, Rachel.
Take care. Have a good one.
All right, folks. So I am going to stick around for a little bit in case there are any additional questions in the chat for me. But man, well, that was great. That was great. I love having Rachel on. Clearly, a lot of things that you can take away from what she's done over the course of her career, and how you can get involved, and really, the things that you need to look for, need to be aware of. John, I see you dropped another question in the chat asking about, when pursuing the startup paths, is it less so frowned upon if one goes from one company to another, perhaps 2-year gigs? Mentioned that you're old school. So, I think truthfully, right, and I have this conversation with a lot of people. It's kind of a shift in the industry itself. One of the things that a lot of people, and I understand, right, depending on your age, a lot of people grew up where, right, you find a company and you just stay there until they promote you, and you keep moving forward. And that's absolutely a path that still works for a number of people. Unfortunately, though, also there is a landscape where that's not always the case, and sometimes you hit the highest level that you can be at that company, whether it's because your skills aren't improving, or I'm sorry, not your skills aren't improving, but your skills have plateaued, or maybe there's a manager above you that's just a few years older, and so he's going to stay there until he retires, and you have no room for upper mobility. Um, so I think the truth is that the way that a lot of industries are moving now is it's okay to change jobs. I would say, I don't want to say fairly often, but in 2 years seems like a little a little short. But somewhere from 3 to 5 years, it's not necessarily frowned upon anymore. And I think, especially in the startup space, knowing how quickly things move, change, and pivot, sometimes your skills aren't necessarily going to be needed the same. And so it's not necessarily someone moving jobs at a faster pace is a lack of loyalty. Sometimes it's just what the situation calls for. And I think the one thing that we see in startups is that there is no set path, right? There is no, we hire these people with these things and this, that, and the other, right? It's a little bit more of the company is making its own rules as it's going along. And so because of that, there's a little bit more leeway to say, yeah, we understand this person has maybe switched jobs every couple of years, but we need this skill set. And even if we get it for the next 2 years, then, we can figure out what to do afterwards. So John, thank you for the question. I hope that answers your question. And yeah, I mean, just appreciate you all showing up again. Anyone else, any other questions for the chat? I'll leave it open for a little bit more before we sign off. But this has been a great episode of Directions. I'm going to start on some housekeeping stuff, and if I see a question come through, then I'll definitely hop back on to that. But just so everyone knows, right, there will be no office hours next week. I know typically we kind of go with an every other week Directions and office hours cadence. We're going to pause it, given the holiday weekend coming up, just to give everyone some time to enjoy that time, enjoy the weather, and just hang out as things have seemed to turn nice and sunny here in Buffalo. But other than that, right, you all know the way to stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram, follow us on LinkedIn, stay connected with us at 43north.org/compass to hear about our latest events and things that are going on. And as always, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Christian Gaddis, and this has been Directions.